Before I get into this video, I just want to say sorry in advance for not having any visuals to show you regarding the movie. Warner Brothers is being very aggressive with their copyright claims right now, so we're going to have to deal with my terrible Call of Duty gameplay. Anyways, let me know what you guys think and hope you enjoy the video. So I just got out of the brand new Superman movie. I had a good time, I thought it was pretty fun, and I figured I'd jump on here real quick and just give you guys a quick, mild spoiler review, my thoughts on Superman, how I feel about it, is it worth seeing, would I see it again? And to be as general as possible, this is a very fun movie that is also very messy, very corny, very comic booky, and very crowded. Now, I want to make this very clear before I actually get into the mild criticisms that I have. I think this was a very solid first movie to launch the DC EU or universe in general, because they nailed how all of these characters feel. Superman and the actor that is playing Superman did a phenomenal job throughout this movie. This is like you took Superman right from some of his best comics and put him on the big screen. He's really fun. He's a good guy. He nails the heart and soul of Superman. And that was the most important thing for this film, because if they messed up who the character of Superman was, the lead for their new universe, the foundations for the future of this universe would have been corrupted. Thankfully, that is not the case. I am very happy to say that the character of Superman was done justice on the big screen, and this is debatably my favorite rendition of the character of Superman. Now, I also think all of the other characters in this movie were also really well done. Lex Luthor was incredibly menacing. He was super fun, super gimmicky, a very fun antagonist to have in this movie. I do have a little bit of criticisms for him, though, which I will get to a little bit later. And the Justice Gang, even though I think they all deserved a little more screen time, were also fun in their own right. Mr. Terrific was definitely a standout character for the entire movie. He was super fun, really interesting character. His gadgets and gimmicks were really solid, and I even liked Green Lantern, thought he was really fun. And Hawkgirl could have been used more, but I guess she is what it is. And there was this other character that's introduced halfway through the movie that joins the Justice Gang at the end, and I thought that was also a nice touch. Now, here is the slight criticism that I'm going to give this movie. This movie feels like a comic book come to the big screen, and in many ways that makes this movie really fun and really enjoyable. With that being said, I feel like this was a relatively gimmicky and, compared to the best comic books, slightly mediocre comic book that came to the big screen. Now, that still means it has that comic book flair, and it still has those fun moments from the comics, but when you try and look at this movie from a logical standpoint, it starts to fall apart really fast. And obviously, it's a superhero movie, so the logic that you're going to have to apply to this movie is going to be different than the logic that you would apply to a regular movie anyways. But even in and as far as superhero movies, this one is just super hard to follow and super gimmicky. It very much feels like you've been dropped into the middle of a random comic book with stuff that's already happening. And one thing that I found really interesting, and I wouldn't really count this a flaw, it's just unique, and if you're not familiar with the character, it might be a little surreal for you for a bit. They just throw you into this movie. They don't explain who anyone is. They don't explain anyone's motivation. They don't really explain anyone's powers. They just assume that you either already know, or that the little bit that they give you through context clues and just through seeing the characters act is enough. And to someone like me, or just in general, if you're familiar with comic books, this shouldn't be that bad. But if you're not someone who is familiar with comics at all, this might seem a little jarring to you. Now, another thing about this movie that was quite gimmicky is it's just really classic comic book goofy, like the old comic book movies that we used to get, or just some comics in general. Now, this goofiness makes it fun and engaging and enjoyable, absolutely, but I'm not sure if I personally loved all of the goofiness. I think this is very much James Gunn's project. It feels like the shareholders, or whoever was funding this movie, just gave it all to James Gunn and said, do whatever you want, we fully trust you. And I feel like he definitely could have been reeled back in some moments. There are some jokes that just don't quite land. There are some emotional moments that end up getting cheapened overall, unfortunately, because James Gunn just has to insert that Guardians of the Galaxy and Marvel humor that he is known so well for. He doesn't do it all the time. He does let a few key emotional notes actually rest and sit with the audience, and those were actually the best scenes in the entire movie. The scene from the trailer where Clark is sitting on the bench with his father, and they're just talking about who he is and what his goals are and how he's just proud of him as his son, was my favorite scene in the entire movie, because they actually had a minute or two to just sit down and have a conversation about who Superman is, who Clark Kent is, and it's just a wonderful conversation between a father and a son. Another part about this movie that a lot of people are not going to like, but I actually really did enjoy, was how relevant it is to today's political climate. You've probably heard, just based off of people freaking out on Twitter and other social media platforms, that the main, or one of the main conflicts of this movie is just the Israel-Palestine conflict. It's literally just that. And they are not subtle about it. In fact, this movie is not subtle at all. When it wants to tell you something, it will flat out exposition dump what they want to tell you, or just put it right in front of your face to make sure that you got the point that they were trying to say. It does come off a little hand-holdy at times, but it's not as bad as a lot of other projects that will hold your hand. It's not insufferable. It's only maybe 2 or 3 scenes that I was kind of just like, all right, we get the point. I know what you're trying to tell me. For example, there's this really funny line about 1/3 of the way through the movie when Lex Luthor and the Engineer get to Superman's Fortress of Solitude, where Lex starts explaining why he hates Superman because he's an alien, and then the Engineer, who is this character that we don't know, don't understand the motivations behind, just don't get any character from at all, just goes, yeah, I hate him too, believe me. I sacrificed my humanity to stop him. And it's just like, okay, oh, cool. Thanks for letting me know, I guess. I will say, I really did enjoy the action in this movie. I thought it was really engaging, really fun. Seeing Superman use his powers was pretty solid. I don't have any complaints regarding the action or the CGI. Krypto looked a little out of place in like 1 or 2 shots, but again, really solid CGI, really solid action overall. And there are definitely some people that are going to be complaining about Krypto, saying that he was too active and too goofy throughout the entire movie. I didn't see a problem with it. He's definitely a goofy character and a goofy inclusion, but he was a lot of fun. I mean, it's a dog. Everyone loves dogs. You're going to like Krypto if you like dogs. One part of this movie that I absolutely loved that I wish we got more of was just seeing Superman in action on a smaller scale. My favorite action set piece of this entire movie is when Superman and the Justice Gang are fighting that kaiju that you see in the trailer, and there's this really cool contrast between the way that Superman carries out his fighting and then the Justice Gang. Their goal is just to be as quick and efficient as possible when it comes to killing this kaiju and just eliminating the threat, and they're not as conscious to keeping the public safe and making sure that a lot of collateral damage isn't caused. And then you contrast this with Superman, who not only doesn't want to kill the kaiju, wants to do anything he possibly can to save its life, or at least put it down in a more merciful and painless way, but while he is fighting, he is doing everything he possibly can and putting himself in harm's way at times to protect a building, to save a squirrel, to save a little girl who's in the wrong spot, to make sure that the building doesn't fall over by stopping the kaiju right before he leans on it. There's this really great shot where this dog is stuck underneath the kaiju's foot and isn't moving, and Superman goes under the kaiju's foot and lets himself get stomped on just so he has enough time to save the dog. I really loved that moment. And this ties into what I was saying before, where this movie really understood and really grasped who Superman is as a character, and I cannot stress this enough. They nailed it, and I am so excited to see this character and this actor portraying this character in future projects, because every single time he was on screen, I was just like, this is Superman. He looks the part, he sounds the part, he acts the part. Everything about him was perfect, and I am so excited to see him lead this DC universe into the future. I also thought his relationship and chemistry with Lois Lane was really spot on. They don't have as many scenes together in this movie as I thought they were going to, and unfortunately the 3 major scenes that Superman gets with Lois Lane were revealed in the trailer, so that was kind of a letdown. But with that being said, the scenes that we got with them were fantastic. I just wish it was our first time actually seeing them in theaters. Now, I'm about to spoil the majority of the final act, so if you don't want to hear anything about it, please come back later after you've seen the movie. But the third act of this movie, aside from Superman, was pretty weak. Throughout the movie, there's this guy who's matching Superman in terms of strength, and he's masked the entire time, and in the final 20 minutes, he's unmasked, and Lex Luthor reveals that he's a clone of Superman, because at some point in a previous battle, not in the movie, Lex got a sample of Superman's hair and was able to make a near perfect clone that is physically stronger than Superman. And this is exactly what I mean when I say it just has some of that mediocre comic book goofiness, because this comes totally out of left field, doesn't make a lot of sense, and just felt kind of when I was watching it. There's also this plot line that Lex Luthor, through nuking something, ended up making his own pocket universe that he can enter and exit at will, but one of the entrances to this pocket universe rips open. He rips it open for some reason, and then the world starts to split in half, and at the center of this tear there is a black hole that is sucking the world inwards, and he does this so that Superman will have somewhere to go. But it's just so unbelievably gimmicky and obnoxious. And when it was happening, I was just like, all right, this is the third act, big bad fight. It is what it is. And I still got enjoyment out of it. But this is what I'm saying when I say this movie is a bit gimmicky and very comic-y and a bit crowded, but still fun. Because watching Superman interact as Superman and watching Lex Luthor be Lex Luthor was enjoyable, but the actual plot line and plot going on in front of me was super gimmicky and kind of corny. And then in the final scene between Lex Luthor and Superman, Krypto beats Lex Luthor up, which I quite liked, and then Superman positions himself at a higher point than Lex Luthor, so he can actually look down on him while he crosses his arms and basically says, yes, I am the good guy, I am better than you. Great scene, really worked for the character, and I'm not even complaining about this. I just thought it was really funny, and it made me and my girlfriend laugh while we were watching it. I think a great way to quickly sum up my points about this entire movie is in 10 years from now, when the DC universe is more expanded, people are going to look back on this movie fondly as a movie that is a bit of a mess and a sign of DC still finding its footing, but a movie that has a lot of heart, a lot of soul, a lot of love, and most importantly, really understands the characters that it is making the story around. And if I were to give you a ranking out of 10, I'm just going to be doing this number in terms of superhero movies. Unironically, I know everyone uses this number because it's a safe number, but I really do think this is a true 6.5 to 7 out of 10. It has some issues, but at the end of the day, it is really fun, has a good heart, has a good soul. I would recommend that you go out in theaters and give it a watch. And me personally, I might go see it a second time just to eat some popcorn and enjoy my time. But yeah, if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Please let me know in the comments down below what other kind of content you want to see from this channel. I'll be probably making another A Song of Ice and Fire video tomorrow. Again, thank you, and I hope you have an amazing day. Peace.